This episode is sponsored by Postman. Postman is the world's leading API collaboration platform, and they just launched Postman AI Agent Builder, the quickest way to build AI agents. Start building at postman.com/podcast/cloudcast.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Some of you, a few of you at least, have asked what happened to the intro. Well, it's back. This is Aaron, and it's time for our Cloud News of the Month show. One quick thing before we dive in, though. It's officially spring conference season. It's here. We wrapped up NVIDIA GTC, a few weeks ago now. And I was at that one personally. But this week is KubeCon. Google Next is next week. And there's many more coming up on the horizon. And on a personal note, it's looking like I'll be at Dell Tech World. So if you're going to be there, please drop me a line. So with that out of the way, let's move on to our Cloud News of the Month. We're joined again by Brandon from Software Defined Talk Podcast. And we talk a good bit about all of the recent M&A activity. That's certainly picked up. And we sprinkle in our usual AI and cloud news as well. And that is coming up right after this break. Is Microsoft Unified Support busting your IT budget? You're not alone. US Cloud is the global leader in third-party Microsoft enterprise support. And we're helping enterprises slash support costs by 30 to 50% versus Microsoft Unified, all while getting faster response times from domestic engineers. No offshoring, no long waits, just expert support you can count on 24/7 by 365. Trusted by 50 of the Fortune 500 and offering senior level engineers with an average of 14 years experience with Microsoft technologies, US Cloud is the smarter alternative for premium Microsoft support without the premium price. Ready to make the switch? Book a call at uscloud.com to get started.
And we're back. Time for another Cloud and AI News of the Month, back with co-hosts and longtime guests and longtime hosts and co-hosts and guests. And Aaron and Brandon, welcome back to the show, guys. Great to be back. It's been another month. How are things going with everybody?
It's going fantastic. The Final Four, as we all knew, was all the number one seeds. So no one had to do any homework. All you had to do was just follow the math on your bracket. That was so that made it really easy for everyone. And for everyone that doesn't really do the homework, this was the year for you.
Yeah. I at one point, because I spend like a few minutes, it's like you're in like 6 or 7 of them with friends and family and coworkers and all kinds of different stuff. At one point, I was in the top 1,000 for the ESPN one out of I don't know how many million people. And then one game, I lost one game, and all of a sudden I was like in the top 250,000 or something like that. So that's the line that we're dealing with. So we're going to get into some real stuff here, but I do want to throw out a question, because Brandon on Software Defined Talk here this last week or so, you did 10 minutes on your dog getting sprayed by a skunk in the middle of the night, and then you proceeded to do, as I would expect you to do, which is to come up with a business model about how to make money off this, in case other people run into this. Beyond that, Aaron or Brandon, what's the worst late night event, non sort of death involved, that you guys have ever had to deal with outside of, skunks or, something horrible? What else is on your, Aaron, I'll let you go first, because Brandon did 10 minutes on this.
So, and actually we were just talking, Brandon and I were just talking about my kids and spring break. This one just happened a couple weeks ago. So got a call at 1 a.m. A couple weeks ago. My daughter either lost her wallet, or it got stolen, or she was drunk and left it somewhere because it was spring break. Who knows? And so one day into spring break, no license, no ID, no credit cards, no nothing.
Was she in the U.S. or a different country?
No, she was in Cancun. So luckily she was at all inclusive resort, so she could at least eat for the week. But yeah, that was a fun phone call that we're still dealing with. And by the way, whoever did manage to find, somebody must have found it, because there was $1,500 in shopping and bar charges. So somebody had a great spring break on our credit card. So that was mine.
That's awesome.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes so Brandon doesn't have to retell his story. Brandon, any other late nights that led you to think that you should build a business model around whatever late night thing happens?
Well, let's try to think. Yeah, you can go to Software Defined Talk, listen to that with my story of the skunk. I guess the other one here in Texas not too long ago, we had an incredibly large ice storm that basically resulted in every single limb and every tree coated in ice, which resulted in, as everyone can realize, that the branches get real heavy and they start snapping, right? And so like throughout this neighborhood that's pretty well wooded, it was just a nighttime of like, I've never been in any type of combat or anything, but it felt like just every few minutes, things are just falling down and you're just like, did that hit the deck? Did that hit the house? Like, so it's both a combination of like, you want to keep everyone safe. At the same time, you don't want physical destruction to happen to, like, what am I going to have to pay for? And every time, every few minutes, you just heard another branch. And of course, like my son and my wife are just sleeping through it. And I'm just like literally everything that's falling. I can't stop thinking about it. So that was I don't know. That's sort of it was just a nightmare unto itself. So I don't know. Inclement weather, let's call it.
Yeah. Good stuff. The other news of the week, news of the week and a half or so. Some folks in the U.S. Government did some dumb stuff with communication, sort of group chatty stuff. They might have given away some secretive stuff. Have either of you done anything really dumb in a group communication that maybe wasn't illegal or treasonous, but that you're not necessarily proud of or got you in some trouble?
I don't know if I've done anything even close to that. I think I've just sent the wrong text to the wrong group chat, but it's usually something like in the school group chat, you're like, you post in some like sports comment and like nobody has any idea what the hell is going on, something like that. They're like, what are you talking about? Why are you,
what is this?
And it's like, and then you look up, you're like, oh, this is the school class group chat thing. And now everyone's, doing that. So I haven't made any, although an easy mistake to make. So I don't know. I haven't done any horrific ones. I don't know. Have you, Aaron, done a horrific one?
Not that I can think of. I think I'm in the same boat as you. I think there was always, of course, you send something to the wrong thread, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head that was potentially anywhere near.
Do you, Aaron, do you remember the time I got fired for? Well,
I wasn't going to tell the story. It's your story to tell, but Brian's been fired
great.
over
What is this? This sounds fantastic.
I'll try and protect some of the innocent of this, but so myself and a colleague were both we were working at a company. It was fine. We were also interviewing for another job at about the same time, and we were going to go out to a VMware event out in Las Vegas like the next week, and we were going to interview with some people and so on and so forth. And so what ended up happening was before we went out there, we were doing some sort of like company or group like review of the month or whatever. And the lady who was running the meeting, was doing the Zoom thing, or wasn't Zoom at the time. It was whatever it was at the time. And her and I were having like a side channel Slack thing about whatever. And what I didn't realize first and foremost was that as she was presenting her screen, everything that I was typing to her was popping up on the screen. So stuff this guy's not a big fan of me and blah, blah. So I said a few things that weren't completely incriminating, but like probably if somebody was actually reading them, probably got me in some trouble. And then we proceeded to go out. We did the event. We kind of interviewed for these jobs, which we ended up taking. And as part of it, I didn't necessarily get in trouble right away, but one of the other guy got a text from the manager, and apparently some other stuff had happened. And one of the guys kind of, I want to say, sort of ratted us out that we were talking to these people. And as part of doing that, he exposed that somebody in the company who was one of the executives was getting fired, although he wasn't actually getting fired. But he raised it up to enough people that he created an SEC violation because this was a public company. And so my buddy landed after, got off a plane, was like midway on his flight home, and started getting all these text messages basically saying like, do not say anything else. The people in your group are now under SEC investigation, and just a bunch of stuff that completely freaked him out over the fact. And none of it had to do with like the stuff that him and I were doing, finding a new job, but it had to do with the fact that this guy that worked for us thought he was playing a prank and had sort of found a loophole in terms of how company hiring and firing went, and it was quite a thing for that. So yeah, that's my experience is be careful with who can see stuff. All right, well, let's get into some stuff. We've been doing this for now 7 minutes. Haven't talked about any cloud or AI news of the month. We probably talked about the most important things. We talked about sports and how to avoid getting fired. Where do you guys want to start? This has been an interesting month. I don't feel like it's been like a huge cloud news month. There have been just a ton of M&A, which seems to be good for the VC community. Anything, we listed a whole bunch of these in the show notes. Brandon, your colleague, your coworker, Matt Ray, got acquired by Google via the Wiz. Did Matt make enough money? Part of the Wiz thing, is he still going to stick around and do the podcast? Is he now living the life of luxury on a beach? I mean, has he achieved the dream that we all hope to get at some point?
No, he's not. He's, I think, achieved the nice 4-year vesting schedule, but has to continue to work. I think that's what like many of us are on. So I think it's a nicer schedule than it once was, but he will still be reporting to work and unfortunately, or fortunately, continuing to podcast. But I think the Wiz is a great example or a great question to start with. It's interesting. I think we should always start with like, one, Google has infinite money. So fine. It's just sort of like your rich uncle just has so much money. Do they even have to care about it? But let's assume for the moment that $32 billion was real money. And I, as I think more about this, and I've kind of like, rolled it around in my head a little bit, is like, I have a hard time figuring out like what's going on. Like, why is Wiz more valuable to inside of Google than outside? Because for those not following closely, the claim to fame is really multi-cloud, security, right? So that's kind of what they made their name on, from what everybody says. And security products are always kind of hard for like just a regular person to use, if you will. But most people say the product is very good. But I mean, I guess the thing I always come back to is like, well, Google now owns them. So now they have to answer the question like, well, aren't you just going to just do GCP? And the answer, I think they're saying no, but like, it just feels like it's suddenly now a burden they have to if you will, answer. And then of course, like if it's not just a GCP thing and they're going to continue on doing a multi-cloud thing, then like, what is Google getting out of that? Like, just other than another business that they paid, an incredible multiple for. So I don't know. So I just think when I sit down and I do the math, I'm just sort of like, I'm not sure why this makes Google more valuable. And I as I said at the beginning, I acknowledge that this is so much money. This is such insignificant money to them. Maybe it doesn't matter. So I don't know. Aaron, do you have any takes on Wiz? Like, why is it a good business for Google to have bought?
No, so I think for me, it was a bit of a head scratcher because you mentioned multiples. I was like, yeah, okay. Don't know exactly what it is, but I was like, ooh, wow, okay, that's a little rough. And then to your point, I was like, what's going to happen long term to all of this? Like, how is this ever going to make money back? And it may not. Maybe Matt will figure that out. But I don't know. I'm just a little stumped as to how, any kind of acquisition for this kind of money and this kind of multiple, other than, hey, Google needed a tax write-off for some reason this year. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, it's an interesting thing to put it in context. I mean, like, so they originally had bid, I think, around $23 billion, and then Wiz walked away from it, and they were going to go IPO. I think they said Wiz is doing, and Brandon, maybe like I thought it was like $300 million in revenue, roughly. Mm-hmm, maybe it's. Mm-hmm. Is it closer to $1 billion?
I've heard it's high as a billion. So maybe give them the benefit of the doubt. Say that it's $1 billion. So let's say that's a long way to go for $32 billion in profit, of course.
Right. So let's say they're doing $1 billion in revenue. Just to put this in context, doesn't necessarily have to be the same exact context, but like IBM acquired Red Hat for $34 billion, and Red Hat was doing like $3.5 to $4 billion at the time. So, they're definitely paying a much higher premium for, again, a sort of multi-cloud product. You can argue that, security sometimes has a higher multiple than infrastructure, depending on, how cool it is or what it does. But it's definitely something that it's a really hard thing if it falls into some product management group to not be like, we want to consume all of the value of it. We want all of the value of it to accrue towards, the people that own it. And it's got to be sort of, Yeah, it is a weird situation. I mean, hopefully the numbers work themselves out. Google stock has been down a little bit just because of the general sort of nature of the market lately. But yeah, it's a big number. I mean, they said it's the biggest acquisition that Google's ever made, not just like Google
and it's
Cloud,
all cash.
Google's
Remember that
made.
too. It's all cash, which is interesting for they're all locked in at that number going forward. So it's just an interesting, because again, I mean, I always think of these acquisitions like, I think Red Hat's a good one, by IBM. It's like, you always think to yourself, like, ideally you're a company, you don't have this product, but you have a sales force that wants to sell it or vice versa. Right. And you're like, I'll plug this in. And when I kind of do that in my head, I'm like, does GCP, like, is the Google Salesforce like this machine that, like, no one talks about it that way, that Google, they have a great enterprise Salesforce? Because, like, if Oracle buys it or IBM buys it or many others, I'd say, like, well, these companies have the machine to sell anything, right? And so, like, you're just giving the team another thing at sales kickoff to go sell, and they're going to be excited. When I think about this for Google, I'm always like, I don't know, the GCP sellers, if anything, maybe the Wiz sellers are like the stronger enterprise sellers just out of the gate. And it's like, but are they going to then merge in? Like, I just think to myself, a year from now, what's the sales kickoff look like for Wiz and GCP? It feels like a very, like, those meetings are going to be kind of awkward. I think it's just going to be kind of weird, So it's obviously I'm going to watch it closely, and of course, I congratulate all the people at Wiz. Like, anyone that gets to become massively wealthy, 100% in favor of that. So good for them. I mean, congratulations. They did home run of home runs.
Yeah, this again fits into our sort of, pantheon of things that we want a documentary on. Because, I mean, literally, like less than a year ago, it was like $23 billion. People were like, I've never even heard of the Wiz, and somebody's going to pay $23 billion for them. Like, that's awesome. And they were like, nope, I'm betting on myself. They grew. I think they grew the business. I mean, maybe they doubled the business, but like, I think they grew like a couple $100,000 or a couple $100 million more. And somehow somebody had the nerve to be like, no, we should flip the numbers on that and make it 32 billion. Like, I want a documentary on that. I want to know how that kind of comes to be. Cause it doesn't feel like it's necessarily like a good time to do an IPO. It feels like Google had a little bit of leverage in this. And they just were like, nope, let's open the bank. In fact, let's open a second bank account because we probably don't have all 32 billion in one bank account. Let's open a second one.
Yeah. Well, I think you're hitting on so many good questions. Cause, like, I mean, one, who were they bidding against? And obviously I think in the case of Wiz, they said no, but like, why, like, what inside Google were they like, we just got to have it at any number? Because, it's famously like, I bet you a bunch of people either worked at Google, interviewed at Google or whatever, but like Google is like famously, like, it's such like a written, like, documenting culture, right? Like famously, like, OKRs kind of started inside Google, right? And everything is just very like regimented, like maybe in a good way, right? But it's sort of like, it just feels like, do the same people not apply this to this acquisition? Like, is there not a document that's like, okay, we're paying this, here's exactly how we're making this money back and exactly why this has to happen today? I think, I mean, like, is it as long as someone that got promoted from like level 1 to level, like the person that got promoted to director, how much documentation was needed for that versus like what is in this plan? Like, is it the same, or I don't know, because it doesn't feel like in the meeting I'd be like, I have a lot of questions here, so.
Well, and you got to wonder how many conversations are having around the Googleplex where somebody's like, all right, we spent $32 billion on somebody. They don't do ads and they don't do autonomous driving. Like, wait a minute, like what?
Yeah. Or AI. Right.
or mobile.
Here's the thing too. Like, you brought up something super interesting too. The whole idea of like, okay, the Wiz are like, everyone's got a number. We just found that out. Right. Because they just walked away from but the whole idea, and we'll probably talk about CoreWeave and their IPO, but the IPO markets isn't awesome, as evidenced by CoreWeave. And so I guess they had their magic number and they hit that number, right? 23 billion wasn't it, but hey, throw the numbers around, 32 billion. Yeah.
Well, the other thing I love about the deal is the kicker in there it's the $3.2 billion if it doesn't get approved. Like, you just like, hey, the worst case is like, you're going to give me $3.2 billion. From what I can tell, that's just a check. That's just like wired over the firm. And it's like,
breakup fee.
I think that's the moment where I think that would probably had to be the final thing where the Wiz board was like, well, we have to do this, right? I mean, we either get all the money or we get $3 billion basically just out of thin air. So, an incredible moment for them.
Yeah. Okay. So that was sort of the big news on the acquisition front. Like I said, there's a bunch of acquisitions that happened kind of over the last, I don't know, month and a half. We put a whole list of them in there, everything from semiconductors to agentic to ML ops, a bunch of stuff in there. On the AI, so let's sort of start with the AI side, because I feel like there's a few more sort of interesting things happen on the AI side. So between vibe coding and MCP, this model context protocol, which one of these two things do you think is a bigger hit right now in the AI space? Who's talking more about a vibe coding, or are they talking more about MCP?
Well, I think vibe coding is like, it's, I don't even know if I would say it's a thing. It's a feeling, man. It's a feeling. So, but I'd say, like, I don't know.
Perfect. That was perfect.
I think vibe coding, I like the idea of like, hey, everyone should just like, start figuring out how to use AI to like do stuff to help them. Right. I love that idea. I think that at least the initial notion of that's what I took it to mean. But now I feel like it's already been destroyed. Like everyone's already showing up. Like there's a vibe coding book. There's a vibe coding conference. I mean, it's just like we ruin everything. Everything is ruined. It just went from like, no, like the idea was like everyone can just like do something. You don't have to wait. Right. So I feel like now I've already swung against vibe coding. I'm like, people are already ruining that. So maybe the longer standing thing is, MCP. Seems like it does make a good interface between at least AI coding assistants and LLMs. So that is a good thing. And that obviously will, help the future vibe coders out there. Now, I don't know questions beyond that. Like, does MCP kind of like go beyond that? Are we back into the old agents and connectors kind of world? I'm skeptical, because that's sort of when you get more than a handful of them, like none of the agents or none of the connectors ever work. But I like the idea of at least the MCP for GitHub into, if you will, something like Cursor seems really good. I'm questionable, like whether or not it'll go further. What do you think, Aaron?
I think we don't have a winner yet. It's just going to be whichever one gets a one-day conference in Austin first. That's right. Going to be the winner.
Vibe coding conference in Austin. That seems like a good place for it.
I mean, I can't think of a better place for a vibe coding conference than Austin. But no, I think, Brandon, you nailed it. One's a feeling and one's a thing. And so I don't think it's one or the other. I just think it's two different buckets. But I will say, from a practical standpoint, I feel like MCP. Without a doubt, I'm going to go say vibe coding is just a trend and a fad and an emotion and a feeling, and until it gets its own conference, it's not serious.
Yeah. Well, I do feel like, I think Brandon's right. Like it is sort of funny. Like we were joking about this like literally last week, because we were like, here's all the stuff that's going to come out of vibe coding, because it's just everything new in the developer space just immediately kind of falls into all this stuff, and not literally like a week later. Yeah, you're right. There's books, there's conferences, there's events, there's probably tags you can put on your LinkedIn profile. I don't understand why developers like hate themselves so much, but I do appreciate the grifters that like got on this thing really early, and they'll figure it out like in the first year how to like make money out of people coming to VibeCon.
It was all the people that like, came to AI a couple weeks too late, and then they were like, oh man, I'm not missing the next trend.
Aaron, you were at the NVIDIA GTC conference. Was it last week?
Yes. Was it last week?
Whenever it was. Last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. Jensen showed off his new jacket, which, of course, is always sort of the first headline. What else do we need to know about that other than, reasoning means we're going to need a lot more GPUs because it's going to require a lot more compute?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. So this is a quick soapbox moment. 25,000 people in San Jose is just insane. Like stop the madness. The convention center is not big enough. When you have to have the keynote, in the Sharks Arena, and even that's not big enough, like just go find a decent freaking venue. I know they're super committed to staying in San Jose, but I mean, you had to eat lunch outside and it was raining, the one day. It just wasn't, it wasn't awesome from a show standpoint. I didn't love the logistics of it, but from a NVIDIA, I mean, hey, there's faster GPUs and there's reasons to go get more GPUs, and everything's sold out. And I will say this, though. It felt like the vibe on the floor, because I worked the booth most of the week. It felt like an old, like, Cisco conference or EMC conference. Like, there was more hardware and racks on that show floor and lots of blinky lights and spinny things. than I'd seen in any conference in a long, long time. I mean, that was my first GTC.
Does NVIDIA let other people's hardware even be around anywhere, or is it all NVIDIA hardware?
It was crazy how many of like cooling and liquid cooling and electrical solutions there was to support all of those big, powerful NVIDIA GPUs. Yeah. So no, it wasn't necessarily lots of others, but there was a lot like autonomous driving. I mean, there was 5 or 6, cars on the show floor. There was robots. It was crazy how many different things. It was big booths with lots of hardware.
Yeah.
Which was surprising.
So here's the stuff I'm because we've been having this conversation about NVIDIA for a while now. And I think the general feeling we have on this show, again, we can debate it, is like this whole shtick from Jensen about like, look, there's only one future that's going to happen, and that is the world is going to have so much AI, and therefore the world is just forever going to need my chips. They're going to need more than I can ever make, and like that's the only future that can happen. And I think we've constantly sort of been like, that's never really happened in the world. Like we've never seen where something is scaled this much that was dependent on the most premium hardware that was out there that could only come from one company, and that the economics forever would just never make any sense except for the person supplying stuff, right? Well, and I keep reading various things, and again, I'm curious, like where even some of the largest buyers of the chips are like, hey man, I appreciate that you're coming out with new chips like really fast, but like we can't depreciate them fast enough. And yes, we would love to have more volume of chips, but I don't need like the biggest, like DeepSeek kind of proved that like if you can get smart about this, like you don't need the biggest, fastest chips. Like did you hear any of that from folks while you were out there?
Yes, but also to put this in perspective, this is, I think, was the big, like from Jensen's keynote, and it probably got blown a little bit out of proportion because he just he mentioned it, but he threw it out there just as a numbers. And I think he meant it as hero numbers, but a lot of people went, oh, wow, holy shit. He said by 2027, the GPUs and the GPU requirements and power requirements is about 700 kVA a rack. Now, to put that in perspective, data center operations way back in the day, like you do 6 to 8 kVA a rack. So basically the equivalent of 100 racks, old school data center. And then you get high density data centers. It was like 10 kVA, maybe even like you can even sometimes go up to 20 kVA with special air cooling. Like 700 kVA though is literally more than most entire data centers.
Yeah.
And that's for one rack. And oh, by the way, the big NVIDIA solutions are like 8 racks. And so you're going to need multiple megawatts, which is, how? Like, right. I just don't know how you're going to get there from here. So short of like nuclear and some of these other things that, from a power space cooling thing, yeah, you might be able to install one of them, but it might be the only thing on your entire data center floor at that point because you got no power for anything else. So like things like that, I worry about even more so. I just don't think the power curves are going to continue to be sustainable at this point.
Brandon, any thoughts on GTC? Anything jump out at you that you were like, this is really interesting, or did it feel like again a lot of Jensen hype with a lot of, that doesn't really the other thing is it doesn't really feel like there's like huge alternatives to their chipsets at this point. Like AMD hasn't really come out with a whole lot. Intel keeps talking about Gaudis and they don't really do anything. Like any other thoughts on GTC?
Well, I think just kind of what we've been talking a lot about on previous shows is I just think all of the demand is AI, right? And Jensen, like, I think if you just get down to it, like Jensen doesn't know anything more than we know about the future of like AI and all these LLMs. Now, Jensen and the team at NVIDIA have built the best chip to build this stuff, right? By far and away. And that's going to go on for a while. Now, obviously everyone's coming for him. Google, Amazon, right. Everyone's doing it. So like with this much profit there, like you have the world's biggest companies, they will eventually figure it out. Now it may take a while, but more importantly, it's just sort of like, I always just think it's got to be unnerving as successful as they are. If I was Jensen, it's just like this AI thing, call it a bubble, call it the growth rate, call it whatever. I mean, you just have no control over it, no matter what he says, right? No matter what he says on stage. I'm like, tomorrow,
right?
Like it just, and you cannot hit him before. It's like, sounds like DeepSeek actually did take more, power and GPUs than we thought. But like tomorrow, if someone said like, oh, came up with a new algorithm and it totally does, it's like 1,000 times more efficient and like we only need one GPU. Like it wouldn't even shock me. I'd be like, well, no, that's Monday. You know what I mean? It's just like, that's what happened. So, it's just like, I just think it's a weird place to be like, to me, it's almost like profit taking. If I'm NVIDIA, I'm like, you need to make as much money as you humanly can. And it's great to be trying new things, but you kind of have to also realize that you're riding an AI wave that, is generational, and maybe it goes on for 10 years. Maybe it goes on for 3 years, but like you don't really control it. And so be prepared. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't know. I always think like when things are good, it's like harvest while the weather's good or some kind of like, metaphor like that. It's like, but like, do not pretend that this is going to go on forever. And if you need to say that at the conference, it's great. But behind the closed doors, I would be like, we need to have a plan to make sure that we survive if demand suddenly, gets weak overnight.
Yeah.
I will say this though, too, the one other takeaway from the conference though, too, is I guess too, again, it was my first GTC, but how broad, because again, I just think of them as, or really kind of thought of them as, GPUs. And then of course there's like the CUDA software ecosystem and some other things like that. But I mean, they really are, just by the show floor, like in so many different areas. And then they've got like the AI, I don't know what to call them. I forget the name of Spark Stations or something like that. It's like an AI PC basically. And so there's all these different areas that they're kind of getting into, and they are trying to diversify. But at the end of the day, is it diversifying? But by the way, you still need big GPUs at the end of the day. And
maybe it's worth mentioning here, because it just came out, Intel has officially named their new CEO. I think it's like Lip-Bu Tan. I think that's how you say it. Yeah. And so, I think it's real interesting there because it seems like, well, everyone sort of has kind of given up on Intel. And I do think, I'm just going to summarize all of this Intel discussion down to like, well, the board decided they had the right plan, just the wrong person, right? So they basically are not going to make any changes. They're going to do AI, x86, and the foundry business all together. And the new person is going to come in, I guess, execute better than Gelsinger. And so that'll be like interesting to watch, right? Sort of kind of like, here you have NVIDIA, on the winningest of winning streaks, right? And then here you have Intel basically doubling down on what they were doing before, which I always think is like an interesting strategy. It's like, I don't know, Gelsinger doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like a warm, soft guy that's afraid to make change, right? So it's like, the fact that they're like, oh, we weren't executing at a high enough level. I'm like, it's like, that's kind of interesting. So I'm really interested to see, we'll put a pin in this one, maybe talk about it next year. It's like, was this just, if you will, it's almost like a coach just like replacing a player, but ultimately the system is wrong. Like they just like, it's the whole offense is wrong. Or it was like, no, actually it was just the player. And I think this is a great example of that. And I think if you're Jensen, he's probably like, great. Keep doing what you guys were doing. I think he's just happy. Like, don't have to worry about you for a couple years. Check back in 2 years to see what happened there.
Yeah. Well, and if nothing else, it doesn't seem like they want to do the break up the company thing. Like it's, like he kind of got put in place to sort of, I don't know whether he's like the great executor, executing all these plans, or, maybe just the chopping up guy or whatever, he's going to run the private equity play on it or whatever it is. But it doesn't seem like they want to be, bits and parts of Intel.
I agree. I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. But then it's like, well, it wasn't Gelsinger.
I don't know if that's a good plan.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But like, wasn't that what Gelsinger was doing? Like, I mean, so that's the only thing you're left with is like, well, we just don't. This is what I always think is interesting in business. People like to talk about the people. It's easier to talk about a person and change a person than it is to be like, we've got some fundamental decisions we got to make here, right? Like to me, it was like, you're going to keep the same strategy. You got to just roll with Gelsinger to the end, right? This is or if you're going to break it up, bring in someone that's going to break it up. So, so I always think like sometimes it takes like, I think it's like it's almost like a startup, like the CMO at a startup. It's like not until you've gone through 4 or 5 chief marketing officers at a startup with the board of directors and the CEO be like, you know what? Maybe what we're doing here is wrong. Maybe it was not the people, right? But until that time, until like they've gone through 4 or 5 people and it's like, well, is there introspection? So I think Intel's doing that at a huge level. So interesting to watch.
Yeah. I do want to give an award. I don't have a name for the award, but I feel like if we're doing an end of the year like Cloudcast Awards, I do want to give an award to this woman, Michelle Johnston Holtis, who she was as of December 2024, which was when Pat announced that he was resigning, or he had been asked to resign. She was executive vice president, general manager of client computing. So she was on the product side. She was EVP, general manager. She was elevated to co-CEO at the time. Remember, we talked about they had two CEOs. Yep. So they bring in Lip-Bu Tan as the new CEO. She doesn't give up her CEO title. She is now CEO of Intel Products. So as part of that, I think the other person who was like the CFO went back to being CFO, but I congratulate her. I think she deserves an award for saying, nope, I got some stuff engraved. I'm the CEO. It's going to be Intel Products, but I'm not giving up the CEO title.
Well,
so congratulations to her and the parking space and all the stuff.
I think I would go with her. I think she still deserves an award. I think she may be getting a very significant financial package to be like, you know what? Yeah. We don't need another CEO of products. The new leader will be the CEO, which of course, again, just goes back to like, it just shows you how ridiculous all of this is, because this has all happened in a matter of months. Right. So,
well, yep. And is this the next title inflation, right? Like we used to have like SEs, and then SEs became solutions architects, and solution architects became field CTOs, because that was a cool C-level title and whatever. Now is there going to be like multiple CEOs in the company? Like there's CTOs everywhere you look in companies these days. So is this the next one?
Do you think she's vibe titling? Is that what she's doing here?
Maybe. Absolutely.
All right, so let's hit on a few more. Let's hit on a few more interesting things before we go too long on a bunch of stuff. On the cloud side, there wasn't a ton of stuff. There was an interesting Matt Klein, who is the guy who invented Envoy, that was sort of the sort of one proxy that did really well in the cloud native computing space. I think he had been at Lyft. He's now the CTO of a company called Bitdrift. He came out with a thing called Observability 3.0, which of course upset Charity Majors, who had invented Observability 1.0 and sort of 2.0. Brandon, you love the monitoring space, which, rightfully so, should just be called monitoring. Do you have any take on Observability 3.0? Does something like observability need a numbering scheme? Can't you just be, whatever your product does? What's your take on this?
Well, I really do feel like the old man coming to the party. It's like, what do you guys say? I was like, in my day, we called this agent versus agentless is what I think, right? It's like, that's what we called this. It was like, oh, well, we can put software on the machine, but then everyone complains, and keep everything local and get all this granular stuff, granular information. But then everyone would get mad because like your agent will mess up their machine, and they'd be like, we don't want any of that. And you're like, oh, we got a better solution, agentless, right? We'll just pull all the data. And then of course that created all this data in the data center, and it was maybe too much data and you got to store it. So I look at Observability 3.0 and it's like, it kind of seems like the same kind of thing, right? It's like, well, we won't pull all the data all the time. We'll only pull it when we need to, but we'll somehow cache it or keep it locally if you need it, which is a good story. But then of course it's like, well, you may need it when the thing is broken, so you may not be able to get it. So that's one thing. And then of course, people are always going to blame the monitoring solution. It's like blaming the network. It's like something's wrong with your email. You're like, the network is wrong again, like blaming the people at Cisco. And it's like, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't. So, it's sort of like, I welcome anyone. Like everyone should take a run at monitoring or observability and see if you can figure it out. But some interesting ideas, but nothing of it like seems like radically different to me going forward. I think they're going to have the same kind of questions. So they'll probably do it a little bit better. I bet it'll certainly have a slick UI, and certainly have like that group of people is really good at infrastructure. I think they'll have well-written code, and that'll probably be good. And I could see them being bought by, one of these large companies that want to refresh their monitoring stack going forward. But I don't know. I don't think it's a huge difference, but I would like to see, maybe I'd like to see an open debate there. Maybe that's a good KubeCon session or monitoring session between Charity and I guess Matt, right? Let them kind of go at it. That would be a fun one for us all to watch.
So sure. Brandon, what you're saying is it's not Observability 3.0. It's more like a 2.1 or maybe a 2.5. I bet.
Well, I think it's sometimes it's like we just loop around the same problems. It's just like, I don't know, keep the data locally. People don't like that for some reason. Store all the data remotely. It comes with its own problems. Like there doesn't seem to be any like you're always circling that same issue. So pick one, do your best with it. Hopefully you get bought. I've tried to do this many times. I never get bought for millions and millions of dollars. I usually just get a nice little exit to go do something else at another company. So I wish them all well.
Brandon, your favorite company, Cursor, just took a $650 million round of funding. They are now they're doing $200 million ARR. They are now valued at $10 billion, basically $10 billion. So 50x their revenue. We talked about the Wiz being 32x, which included obviously whatever premium that Google paid above and beyond that. How excited are you about Cursor now having valuations that are just, just AI sort of, they're in the sort of AI insanity thing. Does that worry you at all as their biggest fan, or are you excited for what comes next for Cursor?
No, I'm really in the worry camp. It's like, I think it's great. It's a great product. I love using it. I think it's really, really useful, and it's sort of pioneered a lot of it. There's other solutions there like Windsurf and obviously GitHub Copilot. So the problem with this is like, this is kind of back to what I was saying before about, NVIDIA on a smaller scale. It's like, if I was Cursor, I would be like, guys, one, we're not building AI models and we shouldn't have a huge run rate. I'd be like, we're running this like a cash business. This is almost like real estate. We're going to get as much money in here and we're going to just bonus ourselves like big cash bonuses, because like, I think going forward, like I say this as someone that truly loves the product, that is like, I've subscribed, but I'm like, everyone is building something like this. And so how this could possibly be a $10 billion business and grow into that valuation with so many people trying to commoditize it, I have no idea like how that happens, but I also don't know what you would do. Like, you do have a great business. You are growing. When you go meet the VCs, you have all the numbers, like you have the numbers they want to see. And they're just like, we're going to give you this ton of money. So if I was, the thing I would want to know on that funding is like, how much of that, what do they call it? Like a secondary, when the founders basically take the money versus like actually investing it in. So like, to me, if that was just like a huge secondary, I'd be like, that's pretty smart, right? That's sort of like an option. It's like, listen, we, the founders, we're going to take our money off the table and we're going to give you the risk. This could be a massive business, but like, in a venture capital, maybe the people that are willing to take that bet, but like, there are just so many versions of this and so quickly being commoditized that it's like, I think as a venture capitalist, like this is a very, very difficult bet to pay off. So again, I just hope the Cursor people all got paid, and I hope eventually that at least the product continues on, or it gets acquired by GitHub. And, cause I don't think it's as good as Copilot. I think it's better than Copilot. And it's like, it's like we were saying before, Microsoft has so much money. Why don't you just go get this one? It's already on VS Code. Don't worry about building your other thing. Don't worry about what you have. Just use this one. But, it'll probably take several years for that to work its way out.
So Brandon, question for you, cause I haven't used it. Is there a moat at all around this, or is it just, they just happen to be so far a little bit better than Copilot? Cause I kind of am like, I see this category as like a 2-horse race right now. And is it, they actually have something better and they have something defensible and they have a moat around all of this? Or is it, to your point, they just happen to be better for right now and so they need to cash the hell out?
I think I would say the three. I think Windsurf is the other one that's real popular that people like. There's a few others, but I think they all are converging on the same ideas. And really, if you get behind the scenes, what it is, it's kind of MCP. We talked about it before. It's like integrating that. And then it's really kind of, if you will, constructing the prompts that you're using such that you get, repeatably good results that, if you will, help you code. And it's like, and because it's built on VS Code, all of these are basically built on VS Code. So it's like everyone's using the same editor. Everyone has access to the same LLMs because none of these are building their own LLMs, right? And then you kind of get to just sort of like who's the best at massaging the prompts and doing the integration. But as that sort of gets worked out, like, everyone's going to be doing the same thing. It's just going to be replicated. So I think there's very little differentiation here in the long term. I think in the short term, it is like you can see significant differences. Like I think this Cursor is much better, I think, than GitHub Copilot today, but I don't think that will last, right? Like even if someone is a super fan, it's just like, it's not going to last. That's why it's like, get your money, give yourself a giant bonus. That's what I would do.
That's right. Things we should have learned from the Slack versus Teams sort of debate that was out there. Although they're probably thinking they're Slack and they're going to get $27 billion from somebody.
True.
Let me end on one last story, or kind of combination of stories. So this kind of ties together with the GTC stuff we talked about. So you had Microsoft allegedly has canceled some of their purchases of external data centers that do GPUs and stuff. Alibaba's CEO is warning that, there might be some bubbles with AI data centers. Like apparently there's a bunch of them in China that are just sort of sitting idle now. They sort of built them and bought them and they're sitting there. And then you have CoreWeave, who was, kind of be the big name in the IPO market, at least early for the year. Not only had to like cut back how much they were going out there with, but they also, the numbers, or they didn't get a pop on sort of day one, which again, doesn't necessarily mean, a whole lot. But Aaron, you had wanted to talk about CoreWeave just a little bit. What's your thought kind of in this space?
Well, so I don't know that I have an opinion on CoreWeave specifically, but I definitely have an opinion on this space. Like, so the whole GPU as a service market, which was, Crusoe and CoreWeave and Lambda and Nebius and a bunch of these others. I mean, every single one of them has moved upstack as quickly as they can, and they should. Don't get me wrong, they should.
Yep.
But and so to kind of go back to GTC, every single one of them had the 2-story booth, platinum sponsor or diamond sponsor or whatever the heck the highest level was. And so they were, they're all dumping a lot of money into this, and this category has kind of evolved from GPU as a service into NeoCloud, is I guess the one that, I don't know if they prefer to use that, but it's certainly the ones everyone's kind of talking about, or this AI cloud is, I think, a better name than a NeoCloud. But all these NeoClouds or AI clouds, I mean, it was everywhere. And this whole concept of, they've got a bunch of GPUs, they've got a bunch of other things like that, connect it all together, pin it all together. I think it's long-term potentially a decent market, but I also, again, goes back to this, what's the moat? Who's going to stop one of the big ones?
Who's using all these NeoCloud services? Is it overload for the 5 or 6 folks that have, the frontier models and they're using them for training and certain stuff? Or is there like a whole bunch of like enterprises who are like, I can't get these things any other way. And so, I'm JP Morgan or I'm, bank or, financial, like who's using these guys?
From the ones I've seen so far, it has been big enterprise customers that can't get the GPUs, that want the Ferraris, they want the GB200s of the world, and they can't get them any other way. And one of these providers has bought up a bunch of them and has them available for a certain amount of time. So it's really more, I mean, it still comes back to, at the end of the day, it's GPU as a service market. That is what I've seen with a lot of them. Now, I do think over time, as a lot of these, and this is a larger thought on GPU as a service in the market, but the whole idea of taking the GPUs, doing the fine tuning and training, I just don't think as many people are going to be doing that long term. And as cost of inferencing comes down over time, I mean, we're going to see, we don't see it yet, but I think we're going to see, well, I should say we've got some that are inferencing clouds that strictly label themselves inferencing clouds.
Yeah.
None of those NeoClouds that I'm aware of right now are labeling themselves inferencing clouds, but they are definitely starting to lean that way. Model as a service, inference as a service. So,
yeah. Are they, and we might be getting into too much depth or outside of your knowledge on it. Like, are they mostly just buying GPUs and putting it all together? Are they buying these AI factories from NVIDIA? Like, is NVIDIA, since they're giving them sort of priority access, like, are they forcing them to buy the whole thing? And then, like, I guess the follow-up question becomes, like, can you actually flip a NVIDIA, AI factory from primarily a training thing into a inferencing thing? Like, I don't know if the economics of that actually work that way. I didn't think they necessarily did.
They don't. I mean, that's the big thing right now. At least what I'm seeing with a lot of the folks I talk to is, I mean, a lot of folks are just like, the training and tuning thing. First of all, I don't know how many, especially enterprises, are actually doing custom fine tuning and training and doing the big runs. I mean, some are, but there's not that many of them. I think the vast majority are, how do I take a model off the shelf, do a RAG pipeline against it for my specific work? And then how do I go inference that out, edge inferencing, as close as possible to where I need the data. And that's it. And so I think that entire workflow is, to your point, entirely separate from like the AI factories of the world.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be interesting stuff. I think, as we've been saying over and over again, like the economics of this whole world seem a little bit questionable. But again, hype doesn't necessarily care about all of your spreadsheets as it's going on. Guys, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Brandon, I'm going to leave you with one last thing. I know there was a little bit of stuff about Doge apparently has asked the Social Security Administration to rewrite their software in like 3 months. I don't want to get into that too much because I don't want like grandmothers and stuff to get mad at me. But like, does this protrude, is this sort of the preview of them eventually saying they're going to rewrite the IRS mainframe software in 3 months, which is sort of your dream, right?
I've talked about it a lot. I think that's the one. It's like, hey, when we all just get a beautiful, nice, well formatted tax report sent to us with a bill, now we can just either file
your taxes by tweet.
Yeah, I mean, and when that happens, we'll know real progress has been made. So I don't know how long. I think it's probably 60 years those systems have somehow persisted on. So good luck to them. I hope they figure it out. That remains the unsolvable thing. I always think though, it's like, it's a very simple problem. This is the problem, how we get money. It seems like we should be a lot more efficient at it. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right. Well, guys, as always, thank you for all the insights, for all the jokes, for all the the knowledge about what's been going on, folks. If you have any questions, all the ways to hit us up are at the bottom of the show notes in the feedback section, whether it's show@cloudcast.net or any of the social media ways that we've got out there. Thank you, as always, to Brandon for jumping on for our a monthly powwow of what's going on in cloud news and AI news. And so, with that, I'll wrap it up, and we'll talk to you next month.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.